Welcome to From Root to Crown with Rebe, your guide to self-discovery and personal growth. I'm your host and a certified trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, Reiki master healer, and intuitive guide. Join me as we explore spirituality, alternative healing, and tools like breathwork, human design, astrology, and meditation to help you lead a more balanced, aligned, and joyful life. Remember, you are your own teacher and medicine. Keep listening for practical tips to incorporate this week's insights and inspiration on your transformative journey. Welcome to episode 7 of From Root to Crown with Rebe Gobel. Today, we are going to talk all about astrology. And I want to talk about astrology through the lens of giving you an understanding of how you might use astrology in your day-to-day life. This isn't going to be 101 in podcast form. This is just meant to give you the barest basics and whet your appetite just enough that you want to follow up and get some more information. And joining me here today for my very first interview on the podcast, I have one of my dear friends and mentors in this space, Kait Fowlie. Kait is a tarot reader, teacher, astrologer, hypnosis practitioner, and all-around magic woman. Can confirm. She combines holistic healing modalities and the esoteric arts to guide clients in summoning their power and conjuring a life worth living. You can learn more about Kait at kaitfowlie.com and at Kait_Fowlie online. I will link all of her information in the show notes for sure. So, Kait, welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is like kind of a full moment because I think that you were actually one of the first guests on my podcast back in the day.
Was I? That was so fun. That was so
Isn't
fun.
Yeah, I
And
know. I love
yeah,
that you're on the podcast. I'm so friggin' excited to hear more about you and what you're interested in and just like your take on all that you're interested in.
yeah, it's been a lot of fun recording the episodes so far, and I can't wait to continue to dive deeper into just the broad range of topics that I'm interested in because I am not a single passionate, person. I love knowing I'm a magpie with information, so I love knowing a little bit about everything. So maybe we can start out with you sharing a little bit about how you came to study astrology. And I hinted at a story when we were talking before we started recording, and I want to share how I came to astrology as well. So, but would you like tell us how you came to be, how this came to be part of your magic?
Yes, I can't wait to hear yours too. I'm really excited about that. Well, first came tarot into my life, and there definitely is a story behind that. So basically, what happened with tarot was I was through a period. If you're into astrology, you know what a Saturn return is, but basically, we have a Saturn return every 30 years. So we have about 3 Saturn returns in our life, one when we're about 29 to 31, one when we're almost about 60, and then one, if we're lucky, then in our 90s. So basically, what the Saturn return is like a coming of age time where we're sort of like taking a big leap into our next chapter of adulthood. And we have to really get honest with ourselves about what it means for us to like live this life and like be here to be here. So Saturn return's a big time. So during the Saturn return, I was going through boxes in my parents' basement. For some reason, I don't know why, but I found a note that I had written to myself as a child when I was 11. And I basically made like a time capsule for my future self and was like, I hope that you get interested in tarot, and I hope that you get interested in the stars and all of the intuitive stuff, because I think that that adds a certain kind of smartness to you. And I found that when I was going through my Saturn return, and it came in like just
No.
time, this message from my past self, and I was like, okay, like message received. I like chose to receive that as a sign that
Yeah.
there was in these beautiful languages. And sure enough, when I started learning tarot, which came first and then led to astrology, like one step led to the next. And I was just like so far down the rabbit hole that there was no turning back. um, but yeah, when I learned these tools, these skills, it just felt so much like home to me. And it just felt like almost a
Mhm.
recollection of information. And that was when
Yes.
I knew that I was on the right track with this.
Yes, I feel the same way about Reiki and breath work. Like that is, it feels like a remembering to me, like coming home. And I actually have a certification in astrology, but I don't practice. And but I studied it really deeply to that level. And but it didn't like doing that for clients didn't feel as aligned to me as some other modalities did. And I love that you combine astrology and tarot in your podcast, and somehow you make tarot something that you can consume through a podcast, which is awesome. I love that. When you first launched, I was like, how is that gonna work without being, able to see the cards and everything? And you're so skilled at really pulling out the nuance of the stars and the astrology and the cards that you pull for the collective. It's really awesome. So I love that you combine those two things. So, yeah. So, when I was on your podcast, we were talking about crystals, and I haven't talked about my crystal addiction on the podcast yet, but that's actually, what the basis of my business that I started 4 years ago as a crystal shop called Freya's Haven. And I obviously love crystals. Crystals are a big part of my practice. They're all over on the bookshelves here behind me. But I came to astrology first, and I was actually following this. Um, she was in like the health and fitness space, but she got interested in astrology and was doing a program that required her to do some, like practice readings for people. So she was offering them really, really cheaply. And I was kind of interested, but I happened to just make a comment on one of her posts. And I said, oh, I was born under the sign of Cancer. So my sun sign is Cancer, but I identify with Virgo. Like I'm a Virgo. That's what I tell everybody because I was born 6 weeks premature. And so my due date would put me in Virgo. And I was like, I just really connect with like that whole Virgonian, energy. And she just came back and said, no, the universe makes no mistakes. You were born when you were supposed to be born. And just because you haven't seen the themes of Cancer and the Cancer archetype, expressed in how you read about it in Cosmo, doesn't mean it's not part of your chart. And you might have other prominent placements, other heavenly bodies in your, the Virgo part of your chart. And I just like that was like a bullseye, like arrow right between my eyeballs, right? Where I was like, the universe makes no mistakes. And my birth time wasn't a mistake. It was divinely aligned. And I was like, okay, sign me up for one of your super cheap, practice sessions. And she was able to, it was the first time I'd ever seen that complicated big chart, learned about a rising sign or, and all the other things that really go into this, admittedly complicated system, but she was able to look backwards in like over my life and say, you were probably wrestling with these themes during this time period. And my eyes just kept getting bigger and bigger, and my jaw just kept dropping further and further. And I was like, you are in like there's no way she could have known those things, like the not public record, right? Like what like wasn't shared on Facebook, like there's no way she could have known that like I was wrestling with those things and themes at that time. And I was like, okay, so can I have another reading and can we talk about, these other themes? And and
Yeah.
looking at my children's charts so that I could understand them better, because it just offered me such an amazing perspective and way of understanding the world around me that I thought was really, really beautiful. And, that continues to play out in my life today as I, and here later in here later we want to talk about like how to use it in everyday life. But um I just find myself like when a big theme comes up and I'm like, okay, why am I wrestling with this? I can I can go to my chart and look at what's happening today and those things and go, oh, of course. All right, I'm in it for the next 6 months. And so this is what my focus should be. And it just gives you permission to, I think, work on the things that come up when they come up. So, but yeah,
Yes.
astrology came into my life probably 7, almost 8 years ago, like well before 2020 when we connected and started working together. Like we're talking 2016, 2017 is
Oh,
probably when I had those first readings. And, wasn't on my witchy metaphysical, path at all. I was deep
oh,
into raising my kids and writing a book and, doing these other things and that had nothing to do with topics of spirituality or anything like that. But so yeah, astrology actually came to me before crystals like really got my attention and then kind of came full circle through studying it. So
oh, isn't that so interesting? It fascinates me to think of you in 2016 without the magical tools that you use now. Like,
mm,
wow. And that's like
yeah,
the beauty too. It gives us a lens to see ourselves through during each season of our life, right? It's a language of compassion. And yeah, so I love that you know your kids' charts and everything. Like, it can be huge for a parent,
absolutely.
for relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, my youngest has a like 7 heavenly body stellium in Aries. Like, wow.
Wow.
So as we come into, as there's a lot of things moving right now through
Yeah.
Pisces and Aries and all of these things, and then coming up on his solar return and all of that stuff, I like always double check in on his chart because it helps me understand who he is and what he might be wrestling with in a way that, at 12, he doesn't have 12, 13. He doesn't have the language to explain why he feels the way that he does. And
Yeah.
I'm either able to give him language or at least give him, like you said, the compassion of, yeah, buddy, you're in it. And things are going to feel dysregulated right now. And we just got to get through this next little bit. And then things will settle down and we'll get a break. So,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right.
Oh man, beautiful tool that we can use to heal relationships, to mend relationships, to deepen and improve relationships. And you and your Aries sun definitely came to this lifetime together to do some big work because you are an Aries rising.
You know what's wild, Kate, is
What?
his moon sign is to the degree the same as my sun sign,
Wow.
to the
Wow.
degree. And the moon represents maternal energy, right?
Damn. Isn't that so interesting? So like,
Mm-hmm. Like I just got chills. Like he and I are cosmically the right people for each other in this lifetime. Like
yeah,
so,
beautiful thing about astrology too. It like helps us to love people even more that we do love, like, oh,
yeah.
it's just, it's such a beautiful language and
Yeah.
vast. Very, there's never, there's never an end to astrology. You never stop learning it. Right?
Yeah, and it's ever changing because everything's always in a slightly different pattern to each other and exerting, slightly different influences. But before we get too deep into this, let's take a step back and share with everybody listening just like some of the basics. We've said your full picture here is more than your sun sign and the horoscopes that you might read in Cosmo. Like, why is it more than that? And why should people think about it as more of than, like a party trick or, something that you would flip through a junk magazine in the airport to find?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's actually funny that you mentioned Cosmo because Cosmo does a great job of horoscopes, actually. I don't know if you read them, but they're written by
I
astrologers.
haven't in years.
Well, that's the right. Like this wasn't always the case with Cosmo.
Yeah.
But yeah, currently they have an astrologer called Jake Register, who's like a 20-something astrologer, knows the stuff, totally legit. They're great. I read them a lot. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
when we were growing up, like that wasn't the case. I don't know who was doing their astrology back then, but bottom line is, yeah, like junky magazine, like just kind of like shake the 8 ball. What's gonna happen today kind of vibe. That's not what astrology is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to say, because it's more than horoscopes. Like, I feel like those were always more, it felt like more of a party trick because it was like, this is what's going to happen
Yeah.
this month.
Yeah.
And I don't, maybe it's different for you, but having worked with you, I can guess that we're aligned here. I don't feel like astrology is as useful,
Mhm.
forward looking.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I totally agree. And I would say for me, it's always been more useful and more fascinating, like in retrospect, looking
Hmm.
back, seeing what plays out for me, for example, during a full moon in Pisces, during an eclipse season, during a certain Mercury transit, like looking at how those transits manifest for us. We haven't even talked about what a transit is yet. So it's already feeling like in over your head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Astrology is a big language, right? So at the end of the day, astrology is basically the weather in space, right? We have like local weather, we have earth weather, and we also have cosmic weather or planetary weather. So basically,
Mm,
what the planets are doing at any given time helps us to just move around our world a little bit more equipped to handle what might come up. So basically, each planet in the solar system, there's 8 if we're not counting Pluto, which is a dwarf planet.
right,
Um, Planet governs over a certain area of our life, right? And the condition of that planet or like what that planet is doing at any given time can give us insight into that area of our life that it governs over. So, for
right.
example, we're in Pisces season right now. So the sun is in Pisces, and the sun represents our focus, like our conscious awareness. So
Hmm.
when the sun is moving through the constellation of Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac, it's all about healing, closure, and letting go. That's kind of the focus for all of us during this season. It can be
Right.
something feel a little bit more called to do because moving into the next season on March 19th, we're moving into Aries season, which is like the first sign of the zodiac. So that's like the zodiacal new year, which is all about starting things. So Pisces is all about closing things, wrapping things up. We're like cleaning out winter, getting ready for spring. And like that spring, like fresh start vibe will start when the sun moves into Aries. So that's just a little bit of like what astrology is and like why we would use it.
Right, right. Well, and I do always feel like spring is more aligned for that fresh start, new year kind of thing, even before studying astrology. Like I always feel like you're in still in like it's so dark and then you're just still in that wintering mode in January. And so I love having the language um around that wheel that we have through the zodiac and being able to um, align myself more intuitively and organically with what each of those seasons represents. I think it's a beautiful way to do it.
Yeah.
So,
And your birth chart, which is like a snapshot of the sky, the moment that you were born, that never changes. But basically, that's like your blueprint of your personality that you always have forever that you can always come back to understand more about you. But like
mhm,
looking at like weather, um the cosmic weather will interact with your birth chart in a certain way. And that's when you can kind of get a sense of like what might be going on in your life during any given time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we see, especially all over on social media, people talk about their big three. And so why are those the three most important? Like, what are they? Why are they the most important ones to know? Um, and how do we use those then going forward?
Yeah. So the big three is basically a look at your basic personality. And if you know your big three, that's actually a ton of information that you can go deep with. Like just knowing your big three and leaving that for now is plenty. It's a beautiful look at your personality. But the sun sign represents how we show up in the world, how we shine our light, how we express. It has a lot to do with like our ego and self-presentation,
Mm,
where the moon is our emotional personality and our inner world. So the sun, how we show up, how we move around our lives. Our moon is like how we feel at the end of the day. When the sun goes down, the moon comes up, and we're alone and reflecting on our day and considering like, how did that feel for me? What do I need
mm,
today? So the moon sign
mhm,
is our personality, and the rising sign is like your essential self or the overarching theme of your life and also how you come off. So the rising sign is a bit of a complicated one. Technically, what the rising sign is the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon the moment that you were born. So it's like your personal dawn. So it's like who you are the minute you come out of the womb, like wide-eyed, taking in the world. So it's about your outlook on life. It's about how other people see you, and really just like the main kind of theme of your life. So
yeah.
that's the big.
I see that play out for me definitely in
Mhm.
my personal chart. So I am a Cancer sun, a Pisces moon, and then an Aries rising. And so I like to joke that emotions are my superpower, and I feel them very strongly. And I'm here to talk about them, and I'm here to just, and I have a big personality. I know that I do. And yeah, I've had another teacher tell me that it's like the sunbeam that you rode into this life on is your rising sign, right? Like I like that imagery of like it was like the first cosmic rays, like you said, as you come out of the womb and you're like, I'm here. And it's like this is your like this was the moment. This was the moment that your soul decided
Yeah. Yeah.
was for you for this lifetime. So I love that. And I love that just knowing those three things, I mean, that covers so many parts of our lives, right? It covers, like you said, how we present and interact with other people and our external focus and our internal focus. It kind of hits those core needs and things that help us understand ourselves so that we, like you said, can have that compassion for ourselves.
Ah,
So because if you like go and pull your, there's amazing tools. I will link to one in the show notes where you can go and pull your chart, but it's a complicated beast. It's like you said, there's a whole language around it. And I think people give it a bad rap because there are all these odd words, but think about the languages around psychology or the languages around like Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, right? They all have it's all just a different framework of understanding ourselves. And it's curious to me how people will jump at Enneagram or Myers-Briggs when they're like, what, 60 years old? And we'll discount astrology, and people have been studying the stars for millennia, right? Like some of these things go back to ancient Greeks,
yeah.
like one of the first things that I think we have done as humanity is ponder the stars and recognize that they do have influence on our lives. And
Yeah.
and we still retain free will, and it's not predictive, but it's more that theme, right? Like we are still deciding what to say, we're still deciding what to do, but it's still going to give that, like, it's the summary on the book flap, right? Like of kind of like what's the theme, what's the main overarching story of this book in the series, right?
Yeah.
And can help us understand kind of what those major themes are.
Yeah.
I love.
And how can I expand my experience of being myself in the world? Like, what would be so fun? Like, what if there was no limit to like who I could be and like what I could create? Astrology can help us to just see ourselves in new ways. And we're always peeling back layers of ourself. We're always peeling back layers of our sun sign. All of these, like all of the zodiac signs, all of the planets are so nuanced and there's so much to know about each of them. So that, like, yeah, we're always learning different things about how we express. We're always learning different things about how to best take care of ourselves and like what we're here to do and how ultimately, right? Astrology is just about talking about it, figuring it all out, which is a question
Absolutely.
that,
Oh
right?
man, I don't think it's a question that has an answer, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's always nuanced and context specific, and there's always other influences of the people around us, or the, transits, or what have you. So let's go just a little bit beyond the like baby basics, like the starting basics. So we hit like, what are your top three? Like, what are some of those other things that if somebody is starting to follow astrology accounts or something online that they might hear and be like, what the hell? Like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Everybody always talks about planets being in retrograde. I think we should maybe, touch on that. But, maybe kind of, we've talked about transits a little bit, so maybe we can hit like what is a transit and how does that play in, and then why are things always in retrograde and what does that mean?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. And
You can take whichever one you want first.
yeah, totally. It might also be helpful to talk about like how a chart is organized, like
Oh,
the
sure. Yeah,
three layers of meaning to a chart. Um,
totally. I skipped right over that. Yep.
no, all good. But yeah, it's so overwhelming when you look at a birth chart. Like you first look at it and you're like, there's all these lines. It's like this wheel, what's going on? And it's interesting actually that well, I'm glad that you had a really good experience of your first astrology reading, because often people are just like, they leave and they're like, what just happened? I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, there was some of that for sure. And I will put in the show notes, I will put a link to where you can go and get your own, but I will also put like my birth chart up there, just so that you can see kind of like what a birth chart looks like filled out. Like, I got no secrets, so y'all can see my birth chart. I don't care. So, but that way people like can go to my website and click on the blog post for this episode, and it's like can see a picture of it, because I think that's hard to maybe
Totally.
understand. But it's a big wheel, and it's divided into 12 slices of pie, right? And then
Yes,
what?
it's a pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so if you've never seen a birth, and that's the thing, a lot of people are coming to me for first readings, they've never seen a birth chart before, which is like understandable, right? Totally understandable.
Yeah.
So the birth chart is divided into 12 slices. As you say, it's a big pie divided into 12 slices, and each of those slices represents an area of our life. So we all have
Hmm.
12 houses, and each of those houses will fall into a sign. And we see the signs on the outside edge of the birth chart. So the sign that a certain house falls in shows us sort of like the theme that gets assigned to each area of our life. So we all have a certain area of our life that we're more in touch with the energy of that zodiac sign, or like that part of our personality expresses a little bit more in that area of our life. So there's signs, there's houses, and there's planets. And we all have all of the planets somewhere in our birth chart.
Right.
And where they fall, they'll fall into a certain house and a certain sign. And where they fall shows us where in our life that planet expresses. So planets kind of represent parts of us, where signs are more like the how of things, or like the personality or expression of a certain planet. And yeah, houses are area of our life. So that's the 3 layers of meaning to a birth chart.
Right. And the the houses stay relatively steady, right? But what determines which signs fall in which house is that rising sign, right?
Yeah.
So you're where like the moment that you were born is always starts at like the zero marker on, the first house basically, right?
Yeah.
And depending on which system you're using, but at
Yeah.
its most basic, your rising is going to determine where that moment is, and then everything else follows in like a predictable um sequence. And but that's like the dial that moves based on your birth time, right? Is kind of how I've always looked at it, is like the houses stay stationary, the dial gets set by the moment that you're born, which is why everybody asks, well, what exact time were you born? Because it's not enough to just know your birthday. You need to know birth time so that we know that what was that cosmic ray of light that you came into the world on. And then like, yeah, the planets are where they are in the sky at that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the constellation of you. This is your beautiful map that you get to work with for the rest of your life. You're stuck with it, and it's a blessing to have.
Yeah, and it's such a roadmap. It really is, right? And I, you know, in all seriousness, it's truly a blessing to have this understanding of ourselves and of the world around us. Like people love to make fun of love to make fun of it, but I see it played out. And in the past 6 years, 3 years of seriously studying it, it plays out in real time. It plays out in real time in the world around us, in my life. And I love following Colin Bedell from Queer Cosmos.
Yes.
And I love how he uses astrology along with a lot of relational psychology to like really help us have deep relationships with ourselves and with each other. But he always talks about how he's like, I don't believe in astrology, I experience astrology.
Yes.
And it's not like, do I believe this? It's I experience it. I see it, I feel it, it plays out in my life and I have evidence to support this in my
Yeah.
in my life when you're paying attention, right? It's like anything. You don't realize what gravity is until you're paying attention to it. Doesn't mean it's not
Yeah.
there. Doesn't mean it's not, working for you or against you, I guess. But I just, yeah, I really feel like while it seems really complicated to understand it, when you start paying attention, it becomes a little bit more intuitive. And
Totally.
yeah, and yeah, love
Yeah.
it. Love it.
It really a study of cycles in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's curious to me too how certain cycles and certain things really, I feel the impact a lot more than other people. Like sometimes I'm like, yo, that full moon rocked my socks. Like that sucked. And then others I'm like, meh, flipped right along, like no big deal. But some of them will just rock my foundation. And it's so curious to me, like to look back and go, okay, well, why? Why did one impact me more than the other? What was the context? What was really, happening? What sign was it in? And to kind of play with that and to understand those cycles a little bit better.
Oh yeah.
It's
And yeah,
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, the lunar cycle is such a beautiful place to start, right? To start
Mm,
was, oh, and it's been huge for me. I know it's been huge for you, but following the lunar cycle is, oh, it just makes life a little more magical. And it's just a beautiful way to kind of like flow with the forces of the universe rather than against them. So it's really a beautiful way to empower our manifesting practices with the
Yeah,
lunar cycle.
absolutely. With the lunar cycle, I definitely had a period where I was like really in tune with it, and like week by week, you know, day by day, where is the moon? What should I be leaning into, and trying to track that. And I think like with anything, there's a time where it feels really juicy, and then there are times where you like really lean into other practices. But it, like you said, that's a beautiful practice to just start with, because we can see the moon and we can see the different phases, and as the closest heavenly body, it has one of the biggest impacts on our lives, right? So that's a
Totally.
that's a beautiful, beautiful way. And it's kind of a nice way to understand transits. So we could maybe like
Yeah.
have a little segue into just like the briefest thing about what a transit is and why people talk about them, which I think leads us into talking about retrograde a little bit. So what's the impact that a transit might have, and what does that word mean, Kate?
Yeah. So transits are when a planet is going through a certain sign and what happens with it. So each planet is always like on a journey through the solar system. And so it's always in a transit, but it's about where the planet is. So when we say Mercury is retrograde in Aries, that's a transit, for example. So it's
Yeah.
basically just what a thing is doing, what a planet is doing at that current moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about how that applies to a birth chart, I think it's interesting to play with, um, like for instance, for me, I have Chiron, I think, parked on my rising, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
it's just past it, but like for the last year, I have been really feeling into. So Chiron is one of those planets. It's a an asteroid. So, but it has a theme just like Jupiter or Mercury or the sun or the moon or anything, right? So for everybody listening, Chiron is the wounded healer, and it can really represent those childhood traumas, childhood wounds, those things that are, that happened to you in your formative years. And over the last really 18 months, but hardcore for the last year, I had just been in some deep, deep, deep healing of those. Like, again, I was born prematurely. My mom was put in a room after her water broke, and they didn't expect me to survive. So, like, they put her in a room and ignored her for like 12 hours. They were like, hi, call us when, I mean, like, so I was born exactly when I was supposed to be born, but they didn't expect me to survive that. And so, like, I was born with so much fear, like
Oh,
from my mom. And like, she was so, so scared and, just didn't know. And, I went on in my childhood and had some like other medical trauma that has really like made me feel unsafe inside my own body.
oh,
And so the last 18 months has been about reclaiming my body for myself and finding safety within myself. And it has been so beautiful to process that through my body, through breath work and through Reiki and, uh, you know, uh, prime tech, like all of these, tools that we use. It's been so, so, so healing. And I'm so, so ready for Chiron to move on. Right. Like, but it's been, like I have such a different level of peace and calmness in my
mm,
body now that for the past 44 years has not existed for me.
wow.
And understanding why I was going through that and why that was the healing that I was called to do during this time period, knowing that that transit was happening, of what's happening in the sky right now and how it's acting on my blueprint and my map, it makes so much sense for me. And it's just allowed myself to have so much grace and um love for that process, and to just go, yeah, I've just got to sit in this. This is what I'm doing and who I am right now. And um
Yeah.
it's exciting to be coming on the to be coming out the other side of that, though, because it's been
Yeah.
some heavy work.
Ooh.
So yeah, Chiron rising return, like transit, like it's no
Would
joke.
get ready. Yeah, Chiron is no joke.
Yeah,
Chiron is
yeah.
that's it's actually funny that you mentioned that because the Chiron return and just Chiron in general is a big one right now for my
Mm-hmm.
clients.
Mm-hmm.
Where I always feel if you feel Chiron, you feel Chiron. If you know, you know, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah,
But
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just one of those things where you're like, oh,
mm,
obviously. Yep.
yeah,
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
and yeah, you told me that Chiron's just now, and I'm like, I understand exactly what you're saying. So it's like you can say so many words in just a few words when you understand the language of astrology, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, let's talk about retrograde though. Like
Yeah,
why do we care about retrogrades? We were just talking about, like you said, Mercury's in shadow, as my cell phone went off in the part that I edited out of, or I'm going to edit out of this podcast. Ugh. So why does that screw with technology, and why does it happen so often?
yeah. Mercury retrograde seems to be the popular one. I don't know why. It's interesting. I think it really is kind of a testament to just the world that we live in and how focused on
Mm,
community we are. Like we live in the digital age. We're always on social media. We're always communicating. So I think that might be one reason why everyone talks about Mercury retrograde.
that,
But
and I
Mercury,
think it happens so often. Like I said, what, it happens like 3 to 4 times a year.
yes, exactly. Yeah, it
Hmm.
happens. And basically, what happens when a planet goes retrograde is that it kind of checks out. So if we think about each planet governing a certain area of our life, Mercury governs over communication and travel and helps us to communicate and like get from point A to point B. And when Mercury is
Hmm.
going direct, things are happening smoothly and it's just business as usual kind of thing. But when
Right.
Mercury turns, Mercury taps out. Mercury goes on vacation and takes a break from its usual regular scheduled programming of helping us communicate and helping us travel. So a
Yeah.
retrograde basically can throw things off and get things confused. It can just be a little bit of a slower cognitive time and a
Mm,
time hit every red light, our car breaks down, all the things. But the invitation is to take a big step back from how our life is running and check in with how it feels for us. Is our outer world accurately representing our inner world? So it's just a chance to like take a little vacation ourselves
yeah.
and know what's getting thrown off, what's feeling annoying, and bringing our awareness to that and just considering what needs to be changed in my life structurally.
Yeah. And scientifically, I think it's interesting. What happens is that it's the way that we perceive this planet to be moving. Obviously, planets aren't moving backwards in the sky, but as they pass us, or as we pass them, as you visually look at it, it's like when you're passing a car on the highway and all of a sudden it looks like you're going backwards or the other car is going backwards, but really
Yeah,
it's just that, difference in speed. And so in the sky, it looks like it's going backwards. But
yeah,
obviously, planets aren't stopping and moving backwards, and everything. Just like, I'm sure if you were standing on Mercury, there would be an Earth retrograde, right? Like we would appear to go backwards in the sky for other planets. And
yeah,
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 so I think, visually that's what it looks like. And then, like you said, it's this beautiful invitation to just like be patient and take a step back and and just be more aware. And I love thinking about it like normally it's helping us and it's just like taking a break. And so we don't have a little extra help that maybe we rely on a little too much
Yeah.
to do whatever it is that we're doing. So we
Yeah.
just have to work a little harder to achieve our goals in that particular part.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
like if life always business as usual, then we would never grow. We would never change. So
Right.
retrogrades an opportunity to think about, how do I want to grow past this? What's my next step? What do I want for my reality?
Yeah, 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 yeah. How else do you use astrology like day to day, Kate? Like how does that really like how do you get like practical with it instead of it's like tarot, right? It's beautiful to sit down and do this like 7 card spread or whatever, but some days you don't have an hour to like have a really juicy practice. So like what do you how do you use it in a practical way, and like what's a simple practice that if somebody was interested in first getting
Yeah.
started with astrology, like
Yeah.
where would they start?
Yes. I would recommend, well, just straight off the bat, finding the people that talk about astrology in a way that really excites you, in a way that you understand.
Mm.
That's sort of like the first thing to do, I think,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I astrology was like finding my people online and just being like, this person, I need more of this information. So
Yeah.
find that talk about astrology in a way that makes sense to you, in a way that you like.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I I have to recommend following a lunar cycle for a number one practical way to engage with astrology if you don't have much time.
Hmm.
In lunar cycle, lunar like living by the lunar cycle is a way of life for me. So I'm always paying attention to what the moon is doing. And there's a free app called The Moon that you can download, and it will show you what the moon is doing at any given moment. So you can see how full it is, you can see what sign it's in, and just knowing that can help you to just feel, yeah, a little more equipped to move around your day and to set intentions and like take actions in a way that just is aligned with sort of like the flow of the universe. Because that's what we're doing when we're following the lunar cycle. We're sort of um, taking the path of less resistance in terms of like the flow of the universe. We want to go with it rather than fight against it. So, for
Yeah.
example, right, the moon is in Gemini. Excellent time to host a podcast because Gemini is chatty and all about communication. So that's just an example right there. Checking out what sign the moon is in and considering, okay, what themes do I need to pay attention to? Is it a great writing day? Or is it a great cleaning day? Or is it a great rest day? The moon can talk
Mm.
about what the day can hold for us.
I love that. I love that. I hadn't considered actually doing that. Again, the Lunar Abundance book, it was really just talking about like the phase of the moon that it was in, but layering in the astrology of where specifically is it, and so what's going to be highlighted, what's going to be,
Yeah.
supported
Yes.
in my life. I maybe will revisit like
Yeah.
just like paying attention to that,
Mhm.
because I think layering in the astrology gives just that depth of flavor, right? As opposed to, oh, it's full, I should release, or I should cleanse my crystals, and oh, it's new. And so manifestation tonight, but like paying attention to the sign that it's in. I really like that. I really like that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
you're there are two layers of meaning to what the moon is doing. There's the sign and the phase that it's in. And so generally in terms of the phases of the moon can either be waxing or waning. And waning means that it's getting smaller in the sky. And so that is a time to kind of slowly turn inward and rest a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
going on in our energy as the moon goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can waxing, which is growing bigger in the sky. And that's when energy is building and we want to take actions to manifest our intentions. So
Yeah.
yeah, paying if is the moon waxing, is the moon waning, and what sign it's in. That's a beautiful way to like set yourself up for a solid day.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I love that. I want to touch real quickly here before we wrap up about all of your juicy offerings and how much time and just wisdom you pour into your offerings. We have not only have you done readings for me, and can I just tell you, I'm already looking for getting a solar return reading. Like my birthday's not until July, and I'm already like, when is too early to, to, to to book that. So, but like, so you've done readings for me, but I've also done a bunch of your email courses and live courses. Like, if somebody beyond like downloading the free app and just starting to do that, like, do you have one of your offerings that you really recommend for beginners? Like, start here, where if somebody came to you brand new, where would you point them in your catalog?
Yeah, I would point them to a freebie that I have called How to Read Your Birth Chart. Get that freebie.
Foundational. Yep, absolutely. You gotta learn how to read the map.
Yeah, learn the map.
Hmm.
So freebie if you feel called. And if you're interested particularly in the moon, I have a moon manifesting masterclass, which is like a 50-minute like crash course in the moon. So grab that, I would say.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Very, very cool. Who do you love following? You mentioned like people that, really like you resonated with how they talk about astrology. Who do you love following?
Good question. Good question. Who do I love following? I love following Jessica Alexandria from Bahati Life. She's
Okay.
Reiki, bro. She's like astrology. She's full witch. She's great. I love her on YouTube.
Okay.
Um, Ezzie Spencer's great. I love her. She was like one of the first people that I found.
Hmm.
And Colin, let's say Colin from Queer Cosmos.
Totally. He is
Yeah,
just And
yeah,
he's just, God, he's so smart. Like, I would just love to sit in a room and, like, I feel like he would just be a fire hose of wisdom and
he would.
information. And
Yeah,
it
he's
would just be amazing. It would be
beautiful.
amazing. What are the questions that you feel like you get asked the most often, or either in general or themes that you're seeing right now when people are coming to you and they're like, yo, what's happening? Um,
Yeah,
or even like, what do people hope that astrology can answer for them? And is astrology the right modality for that? It's kind of like two
yeah.
totally separate questions there. But
No, that's a great question. Yeah, and the thing is, like the question that people ask me most is, what is going on right now? Like I have been feeling so tired. I've been like stressing out. Nothing's been working. That's like the number one thing. And it's such
mhm.
a question. I'm like, well, why don't you tell me what area of your life like thrown off? But yeah, so like just what's going on in the universe generally is the
Mhm.
is thing. But the two areas of focus that I find that people are most interested in learning more about are love and career. Those are the two
Mm.
hots. We only care about love and career. Everything else is just besides the point.
That's so fascinating to me because those have never been the questions that I have brought to astrology. It's always been, how can I understand, I guess maybe love, just in like, how can I understand my kids better? How can I understand my partner better? How can I love myself more? How can I understand myself more? So I guess maybe that falls under the umbrella of love, but like thinking about
Yeah,
finding love, I don't
yeah,
know. It's just not the stage in life that I'm at too.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
awesome. Awesome. Okay. And so do you feel like astrology is a good tool to answer those questions? Like, do people get what they were hoping, like answers? Do people get satisfactory answers from astrology around those questions?
Yeah, I would say yeah, because it is about timing. For example, if
Mm,
if Venus is doing something great in your chart, it's a great time for love. Go like put yourself out there, download a dating app, do the thing. But
yeah.
if like Mars is on your spot right now, and like Mercury retrograde is on your spot right now. Take a beat and write a bucket list for you, what you want in a partner, for example. But there's a time for everything, but
Yeah.
it's always everything all the time. But there's always the season that we're moving through, and
Yeah.
astrology can just like what it is a good time to focus on.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
Yeah. No, I totally see that. Like I said, it's informed, like, of course I'm working through this right now because of what's happening for me personally and
Yeah.
my own transits.
Oh
So
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Really affirming.
So Kate, before I let you go, let me ask you this one question here. What feels really supportive or lights you up in your system from root to crown, right? What is the practical tool or what is just like inspiring you to learn more and feels really juicy in your system right now?
Mm, I'm gonna have to go with a very Moon and Gemini question or answer rather.
Yes.
Um, conversations with people. That is where the magic just feels like it is for me right now. Talking to people, sending voice notes. It's getting words out of our head and into like the ether, having a sounding board.
Mhm.
Real change happen. That's where real growth happens. Hearing yourself talk. So that right now.
I love that. There's so much energy that gets moved through our throat center, right? And even like you can think it to yourself, but it's not the same as speaking it into existence and speaking it out loud, like the vibrations of our voice send energy out into the world, right? And it gets felt and received um and I think that there's so much magic, whether the moon's in Gemini or not. That just in in daily life, the just even the attempt to communicate, whether it's with yourself or with the universe or with a loved one, as long as um the intent to do no
Mm.
harm is there, right? I feel like there's so much magic that can be done that. And I really appreciate the conversation that we have had here, Kate. Like I felt like we had an aggressive outline that I sent you for this, but I think we nailed it and we're in a pretty good time position too. So I will again point everybody to your website, kaitefowlie.com, and to you on socials. Pick up that freebie, pick up any and all freebies that Kate has available, speaking from personal experience. Her Any of her email like journaling courses, not only is it a good education, but do you ask good questions? I think that is a true
Mm.
skill that I'm sure your years of tarot and astrology, like asking the right questions is half the battle. Like the
Yeah.
better our questions are, the better our lives are. And so you ask some freaking fire questions in your courses and just like drop them on us and are like, yeah, I'll see you in the comments. And you're just like having to pour your heart out on the paper. It's amazing. So it's truly one of your gifts, Kate. So thank you so much for your time here today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's just an honor to be connected to you and to have been your first podcast guest.
Well, you are very, very easy to talk to. So thanks for being gentle with me.
Like,
Thank you for joining me here today. As you navigate your path, may you continue to honor and trust your intuition, cultivate self love, and embrace the beauty of your unique journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review From Root to Crown with Rebe Goebel. Your feedback is invaluable and helps us reach more wisdom seekers just like you. Stay connected by following us on social media at Rebe Goebel, and remember, you hold the power to create the life you desire. Until next time, may your roots be strong and may your crown be open to source.